Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. On the show, all the way from the Western Cape, a dear friend, Jasmine Khan. I do refer to her as a dear friend, but we've never met. She's an authoress, and over time we've discussed all the books she has written, but on different platforms. She's visiting Johannesburg and she's decided to visit us here on Let's Talk to talk about her new book, The Moon is Sighted. She'll be with us in a short while and we'll be talking to this amazing grandmother who is passionate about family, community and upliftment of the community. Another lady who is very passionate about upliftment of communities, very special women, is Julie, and I think her organization is called Crestu. She will correct us when she comes into studio. She'll be talking about the upliftment of women, both young and old. So it's all about the good things in life, the good things in our communities. And our first guest too is here to talk about how you can change. Change is possible if you're willing to put in a bit of hard work. And we're going to be talking to Super Coach, and he is Farid Kalu, no stranger to the show. He's been here before. This time around, he's going to talk about an amazing concept, and it's called using your weakness as your superpower. So let's get talking with Farid Kalu and how we can start changing our lives. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam, and thank you for having me once again.
Lovely to have you on the show. And I kind of wondered, I thought, well, Farid's coming back on the show. We're going to talk coaching again. What's the different angle we can use this time around? Because you've been here before. But I liked the heading. I liked the topic suggesting weakness, using or turning your weakness into your superpower. And immediately what comes to mind for me is your superheroes. You kind of think of these guys flying around in their capes and all their superpowers, but that's kind of almost comic book stuff. And you wonder, is this workable in real life? So how do you go about unpacking this? And how do I take a very negative or a very toxic weakness and turn that into a superpower?
I love the idea that the definition of superpower is completely different to everybody. For example, we look at mums in everyday situations and the things that they are able to accomplish on a daily basis. And they are superheroes. It's so interesting to watch what they go through on a daily basis and realize that the level of superpower that we ascribe to each individual is completely different depending on what they do. But when it comes to the everyday person, we achieve so much without even realizing how successful we are in those little fields. Now, how do we change or work on our flaws, our weaknesses, and convert those into superpowers? If we use the example of mums again, we have mums who find it very, very challenging to be bringing up kids in households, multiple kids, single kids. They find it very challenging to be bringing kids up in households. But with practice, with time, we have a chat to these same mums and we find that the kids are growing up in well-rounded, healthy homes. These mums have managed, they found their flaw, they know what to work on, how to excel, how to improve on themselves, and they've managed to turn that into healthy, well-rounded individuals. That's a superhero.
It's almost oxymoronic when you talk about superpower and weakness in the same sentence. And I also sometimes wonder, I'm always, been I've always been told about my weaknesses as growing up as a girl by my mom, by my siblings, etc. My weaknesses have always been pointed out in my relationships now, in a kind way sometimes, and not in a very kind way. And I think that's a human trait, that we point out the weaknesses in the people around us. We become very defensive, and despite the weaknesses being pointed out, nobody kind of tells you how you can turn it into a positive.
It's important that when we look at our individual weaknesses, I always tell my clients, write down the things that you want to improve about yourself. Writing these things down, whether it be on a daily or a weekly basis, allows you to physically see the things I'd like to work on. People think about their internal struggles, their internal issues, things that have been pointed out to them by others. But when we write these things down, it allows us to focus on, that's what I want to work on today. That's what I want to work on this week. So when we start working on these, what we call weaknesses, we must always remember that it's a personal thing. If somebody says to me, Fried, your weakness is you talk too much. And I get that. I get that regularly, especially as a life coach. Wow, this guy just can't stop talking. But what about the introvert who's watching that and he thinks, wow, I want to be that person. So it becomes such a personal thing where my weakness is looked on by somebody else as a superpower,
Absolutely,
a strength. And this is how we judge ourselves, and this is how we then judge others. We need to start realizing that we don't need to judge ourselves that harshly. So when we start making little notes of things that we'd like to improve on a daily basis, we then can work towards bettering that, becoming better for ourselves. Become better for yourself automatically means I become better for others. When I focus on becoming better because somebody said something, I'm not focusing on becoming better for myself. I'm becoming better because somebody else wants me to be a different way.
You're talking about better versus a superpower. Why do you use the word superpower and overcoming your weakness by your superpower rather than bettering yourself? Because I'm kind of wondering, won't people step back a bit and say, I can't be a super being. I want to be better, but I can't be a super being.
One of the important things that we individually and as a society need to realize is that just being yourself makes you completely unique. And that on its own can be your superpower, that you are completely unique. If we focus on our uniqueness, what makes us different from everybody else, and everybody is different in their own special way, we're no longer mediocre beings. We are extraordinary beings. What I really want, if anything, for our viewers to take out of this is that find your uniqueness. Let your uniqueness shine. Don't be intimidated by the fact that you as an individual are different. Different is your superpower. It's what makes you stand out from everybody else. Find what makes you unique. Work on that and let your uniqueness shine through.
When we talk about jotting down, journalizing perhaps things that we want to improve on, easier said than done. I guess it's our nafs, it's our ego. It's very difficult. I've tried this exercise many times, trying to journalize what I want to improve on and what I want to achieve going forward. Why do I find it so difficult? Is it a general thing amongst us as human beings? Is it that we don't like to put a mirror in front of us? And how brutal do you have to be in a situation like this? Sounds very simple. Please journalize or jot down 5 things that you need to or want to change about yourself. And then write down 5 things that you think you're good at. I find that exercise very difficult.
It's absolutely a difficult exercise. But what I do find is that children and those who genuinely love us, family, close friends, if they want what's best for us, they're always going to be honest. And kids, I find, are the absolute most honest. I speak to my daughters, 8 years old, and I say, love, what would you like Dad to improve on? And she's as brutally honest as you can get. And she will tell you, Dad, I like it when you do this. I don't like it when you do that. That's brutal honesty. And it helps me jot down what it is about me that I should change. Speaking to my friends, speaking to my loved ones. But you're absolutely right. It's one of our weaknesses that we don't want to look into that mirror and see the negatives. But writing these things down, jotting them down, allows us to formulate a plan of action. One of our weaknesses is we have a great idea of what we want to improve on, what goals we want to set ourselves, but we lack when it comes to the execution of the plan. Having a plan and not putting in any action towards achieving that goal is the equivalent of having a headache and then looking at a picture of Panado.
And not taking the Panado.
Not taking the Panado. I can look at that picture all day, but my headache's not going to go away. I need the action.
Let's go for an ad break. Farid Kalu is in studio. He is a life coach based in Johannesburg. We're talking about turning your weakness into a superpower. Fascinating stuff. Right after the ad break, we're going to talk about the how, the actual how we implement it, and let's look at time frames as well. Welcome back. Farid Kalu is a certified coach. He's here to talk about turning your weaknesses into a superpower. And Farid, it's time for confessions. I must say, when I was told that you're coming back on the show, I kind of asked the producers, but what are we going to talk about? Been there, done that, done and dusted. And I've just realized we're going to actually run out of time, because this is truly a very important issue. Because life coaching is about getting to the next level of your personality, bettering yourself, being the best version that you possibly can be. But how real does it become for the people around you? The how and the time frame.
If I use an extreme example of turning flaws and weaknesses into superpowers, and I'm going to use an extreme example on purpose because viewers out there will be able to relate on some level to what their individual challenges are. I had somebody come to see me who felt uncomfortable in their bodies. They felt unhealthy. They felt overweight. And I said to them, how about you don't look at overnight becoming a fitness instructor, but start working slowly, because everything is a process. Life is a process. Bettering ourselves is a process. But start working on taking your walks and getting more focus on your health, getting more focus on your body, becoming fitter. And with time, became a hiker. This person became a hiker.
Wow.
And having become a hiker, then had the vision of climbing a certain mountain. Nothing extravagant, but to them, it was a big deal to get to the top of this mountain. Finally managed to do that.
And it time frame?
I think it was about 8 months from the time of wanting to get out there to the point of actually having achieved that. We got to be dedicated about it. The point is, we go back to our previous discussion about jotting these things down, working on it, and put it into action.
So having goals, writing them down, have a vision board perhaps, but also let's see how detrimental or how positive it is for the people around you. So you have an issue around weight. You want to reach your goal weight, but people often well-intentioned talk about your weight. Oh, you'd look great if only you could be 5 k's light, or whatever the case may be. How demoralizing is that? Or does that give you the impetus to really go out and do it?
It's completely demoralizing, because we then start internalizing that one issue that they continuously mention.
You look at it as criticism.
Absolutely. But what we need to realize is that as human beings, as people, there are so many facets to us that make us who we are. Our weight doesn't define us. how many comedians, people on TV, famous people we know, are so comfortable in their bodies, but they found a way to channel their awesomeness. They may have sense of humor that gets them up on stage, and the focus is no longer about that weight. The focus is on what they're really good at, what they really shine at. We shouldn't internalize the criticism.
There's more to them than their overweight
Absolutely.
body.
That overweight doesn't define who you are. Focus on what you feel your strength is. By taking in too much of personal criticism, we then start internalizing, and we then define ourselves by what others criticize us for. Look at what we individually shine at, and we focus on those things.
People are different. People respond and react to different stimuli and time frames. Bearing that in mind, what would you say, how much time do people invest in themselves through a coaching methodology to reach their end goal and to become a superhuman being or a superpower?
It's a tough question, because it's like saying how long is a piece of string. Each one of us, by virtue of being individuals, will have a different length of time before we achieve that superpowerness. So, for example, I may be so dedicated in wanting to achieve my goal. I put in hours every day. Somebody else may be a little bit more lax. They know the goal that they want to achieve, but they're also comfortable in that journey of getting there. They're in no hurry. So it's difficult to assign a timeline. But what I say in life coaching, if you can give yourself anywhere between 3 to 6 months of having yourself life coached and working on having jotted down what you want to achieve, at 6 months you would know that you are on the right journey.
What happens after the 6 months? So you've reached your goal, you've turned your weakness into a superpower, like the example you've given us. What next? You can't now just throw caution to the winds and think everything is now happily ever after. You've got to do constant work. What is that constant hard work or homework that you have to put in to remain in that frame of super amazingness?
I always use the example of a candle. If you imagine yourself being the candle, you've reached that goal, you are that single candle, that light. Your job now is to light up every other candle. And when you light up every other candle, you brighten the area around you. So once you feel like, I've reached that goal, I've reached my fitness level, I've reached my mental stability level, whatever your goal may be, start passing that on to others. Start spreading that around you. Because also by spreading that around you, the people, your immediate family, your close friends, motivate them. By motivating them, you keep yourself motivated. It's very difficult to be motivated and everybody around you is demotivated. You start losing that intensity, that focus. But when you start sharing that, when you start sharing the knowledge you've learned, sharing the intensity of wanting to be better, you will find that those around you become better. It's the old saying, success surrounds itself with success.
Absolutely.
So when we surround ourselves with people who motivate us and we motivate them, that circle becomes bigger.
You've used an example of losing weight and attaining the status of a super coach, or perhaps, climbing a mountain or whatever the case may be, which is awesome in its own self. What about people with addictions? What about a gambler, for example? What about an abuser, someone who abuses his spouse? They're often referred on to therapy, psychotherapy. What can you as a coach do for them? How's that going to change their mind shift?
The most common challenge that they find themselves in is, if you speak to any gambler, if you speak to any abuser, mental, physical abuser, any person that's addicted to drug addiction, the most common thing you find is the passing of blame. they never take responsibility for what they're doing. They never see how it harms those around them, how it harms their loved ones, their spouses, their children. What I do in life coaching when I'm dealing with clients like that is, step one, let us acknowledge A, that there is a problem, and B, that you need to own this problem. No superhero got the baton passed on to him. He became that superhero. She became that superhero by hard work on their own. You're not going to recover from this challenge that you've got, from this hurdle you're facing, from drug addiction, from being an abuser, from gambling, by constantly passing blame onto others.
So it's everybody else's fault but mine.
Yes.
The reason I find myself in this situation is because the whole world has let me down.
Absolutely.
That being said, how important is it for a person like that? Let's assume an abuser, someone who abuses or beats up on his wife all the time. He needs to go in for psychotherapy, obviously. Where and how does coaching play a role? Would that be supplementary? Or can he just come for coaching and that will hopefully address the problem if he's determined enough?
I always suggest the combination works best. Go do the psychotherapy, but come in for coaching, because essentially what we do is we assist you on the journey. I might not be able to map the journey out, but what I can do is I can be your co-pilot on that journey. I can help you along. In those moments where you feel like I'm faltering, that's where we come in, and we are the pom-pom guys, cheering you on, making sure that you stay on the journey, stay on the path. But the most important thing is we have to get them to the point of acknowledging that there's a problem and acknowledging that this problem is self-inflicted. And third and most important, that it can be changed. It can be changed, it can be turned around. You can turn that weakness, that flaw, into your superpower. When I use the word superpower, we must understand that by you changing where you were today to becoming a much better, greater version of yourself tomorrow, you've inspired others who look at you. You've inspired those who find themselves in the same situation. They see how you've turned your life around. They see the success that you've made of your life. That's your superpower. You found that uniqueness.
Almost time for wrapping up the interview, but let's ask this question. For an abuser, let's assume he beats up on his wife on a daily basis. Now that he comes for coaching and psychotherapy or just coaching, he starts learning to pull back. We know it's about control, we know it's about power, but now he starts pulling back. How important is it for him to be acknowledged for the fact that for the past week, I haven't beat up on you? Do you acknowledge them? What's that going to do? Is it going to stop the action even further?
It's a very interesting question that you ask, and we use the word triggers. Triggers for him. What triggers you in that moment of anger to want to get to that point of beating up your spouse? Start looking at what those triggers are. See them a mile away before they come. Work on that. I'm always skeptical about heaping too much of praise on you've accomplished 1 week of not having beaten up.
Don't overdo it.
Why should I be congratulating you for being a normal human being? I'll congratulate you when you can take what you've learned through this process and teach others. Then I'm on board, completely on board, to say, well done. You've now spread that light. You're being the candle, and you are teaching others how. Spot those triggers. You don't have to be that person. Be better.
We've come to the end of the show. Have you actually, in fact, worked with people that have been abusers?
Absolutely.
Have you turned the situation around?
Absolutely.
Addicts, etc.?
Absolutely.
Alhamdulillah. How do people get hold of you?
You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, Farid Kalu Life Coach, or send me an email, friedkalulifecoach@gmail.com.
And that's where we leave. Thank you indeed. It's been most enlightening.
Thank you for having me.
Hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
There you have it, Farid Kalu, talking about turning your weakness into a superpower. And I'm so glad I've had this discussion. He's truly made me see things slightly differently. Don't go away. We're going to talk to another empowering woman who goes on and touches other lives in an amazing way. Welcome back. My next guest hails all the way from the Western Cape. Her name is Jasmine Khan. She's written 4 books and she's absolutely a pillar of her community. The name of the book that we're going to be discussing today is called The Moon is Sighted, and I think so well timed because alhamdulillah, in another month and a half, inshallah, we will be trying to sight the moon for the Mubarak month of Ramadan. Jasmine Khan, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program, and wonderful to finally be meeting you after talking to you for what, on and off for 10 years.
That's correct, Julie. Wa alaikum salam and assalamu alaikum to the viewers.
You've, over time, I know that you host a radio show, you do lots of motivational talks, you're very active in the Muslim community in the Western Cape. And along the way, you decided to write books. Let's start by talking about your first book. Why was it important that you started writing these books and getting them out into the community? And by the way, I also need to mention, you're a grandmother of 5 grandchildren,
That's
am I right?
correct.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Julie. I've always written as a child, as a teenager, but, things happen and I put it aside. In 1991, I finally wrote a short story which won first prize at the African Writers Association, and 2 of my articles were published by magazines.
What was the first book all about that you won an award for?
It's a story. It was called The Small Dark Room.
Okay.
It was based on an experience of myself because I'm claustrophobic, and my aunt used to lock me in the pantry
as punishment
when I was disobedient, and I used to run away from home and to go visit my granny's sister-in-law, and I loved her very much. Her name was Auntie Mummy, and then my auntie used to, as punishment, she used to lock me in the pantry, and the story actually details how this little girl overcomes her fear of the darkness.
How did you overcome your fear?
How did I overcome it? I'm not exactly sure. I know that as a child, I never wanted to sleep in the dark. I always needed a little lamp. They used to have those little oil lamps. I think just as the years progressed and I grew and developed, I found that I was able to be in the darkness, and it was comforting, I think it's got a lot to do with my spiritual development.
Alhamdulillah.
And I don't, up till today, I don't like a lot of noise. I don't like too much activity. I prefer to be in stillness. Alhamdulillah.
So your first book that dealt with spirituality was Experience the Flow.
That's correct.
Let's talk about how you became so spiritual and knew that you had a very big role to play in the Muslim community.
Julie, it was kind of strange. I retired in 2002, and I lived in a separate entrance, granny flat on my elder son's property, and I was very content. I could read myself into a coma. I could watch TV if I wanted to. I made my ibadat, and I enjoyed having my grandchildren with me. And I was perfectly happy until one day I went on holiday to the wilderness. And something happened there, which gave, I always called it an epiphany. And I always tell this person who did it, it's my friend's daughter, she asked me a question. She said to me, why are you so angry? And I don't know where the words came from, because I certainly didn't think of saying it. I just said, I'm so angry because at this stage of my life, I'm alone. And this opened the door for me. And when I left, she gave me a book. And she said to me, don't read the book on the bus. Wait until you get home. Of course, I disobeyed her. I read the book on the bus. Until today, I don't know what the title of the book was. I don't know who the authors were. But it dealt with synchronicity. The principle of everything happens for a purpose. Written by 2 authors in America. But I think it was part of this whole movement about being in the present moment. And the contention is that you could be thinking of somebody that you haven't seen for years, and then the phone rings and that person is on the other side. Or you knock into them at the mall. So this book impressed me so much that I then went to the public library and I took out books on this kind of thing, self-development, self-esteem, that kind of stuff. And eventually, from the library, I started buying the books. And it struck me that all the books has the same message, and the message is the message of Islam.
Alhamdulillah.
And at that time, there were a lot of people coming from the United States and everywhere else with this kind of work, and they charge enormous amounts of money. But they talk the talk, but they don't connect it, because they call it the universe. They call it all sorts of names, you know. So I decided, I sat down at my computer, this was in 2005, and I wrote basically something for a facilitation. And at that time, I hadn't yet met my partner-to-be, who is Najmanisa Solomon. But then the thing laid on the computer for 5 years. And when I met her and I showed it to her, she said to me, you write the way I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the interim between 2000 and 2010, I was asked to write a column for the Muslim Views. And because of the stuff that was in the computer and in myself, in my psyche, it filtered through to the articles. And I got such enormous feedback from as far afield as Norway and New Zealand.
So tell us, what were the articles all about? I presume it was based on the Islamic ethos.
Julie, what happened was that the column was sparked by the fact that an incident happened actually in Johannesburg. A mother wrote to the Muslim Views explaining that her daughter was being abused by her husband. And she was very disturbed about the fact that she took the case to the Ulama Council, and they said they can't do anything about it because he's a teacher in the community, and then she must go to the police. So I read this article, and this fired me up. And I sat down and I wrote a letter to the editor, you know, very politely, couched very politely. And I ended off with the analogy that when Rome was burning, the emperor was fiddling. So I said, while the ulama are fiddling, the women are burning, you know.
Right.
So the editor of the newspaper asked me then to start this column. And I discussed it with Najmanisa, and she encouraged me to go on, to go forward with it. And we called it the column Stop the Cycle.
And alhamdulillah, I must say, from way back then, lots and lots of awareness is being created around women abuse or abuse in general. My previous guest, Farid Kalu, is a life coach, and we touched on women abuse and child abuse as well. And I'm very pleased to say that Najmanisa is going to be on the show on Saturday to talk about the type of work that's being done in the community. And also, alhamdulillah, that the ulama councils, the Jamiat, etc., are now putting their might behind these type of issues in the community. And I guess it's thanks to people like yourself that started creating the awareness, and our ulama bodies realize there's a much bigger role to be played here collectively in stopping all the evil in our communities.
You know, Julie, the thing is that what my intention is that I look and see what is happening in the community. Somebody actually said, and I don't think it was said in fun, it was actually meant in the wrong way. She said, I don't want to meet her because she looks at your life and then she goes to write about it. So...
well, if there's a story to tell, you need to tell it.
I mean, everything that I write is based on something that happened. I don't suck it out of my thumb. But the point is that I write it not in a judgmental manner. I say these things are happening, and then I give the answer according to the Quran and the Sunnah. And my articles are always written in the form of questioning. Should we be doing this? Why are we doing this?
And also not naming names,
No,
I'm
of
sure.
Course not. Of course not naming names. But now the point is that, and those articles are actually compiled into my second book, which is called Behind Closed Doors, because we're so worried about what the neighbors are saying, but we don't worry about what Allah is saying. So we think we're doing it behind closed doors, but I mean, Allah sees everything.
Absolutely. Let's go for an ad break. When we come back, we're going to talk briefly about Experience the Flow, Behind Closed Doors, your third and your current book, inshallah. In the 12 minutes, I hope we have enough time to cover all of that.
Inshallah.
Jasmine Khan is my guest. She's an authoress all the way from the Western Cape. She's here to talk about her book. The latest book, the fourth book, is called The Moon is Sighted. Alhamdulillah, we're going to be doing that in a month and a half to sight the moon for the beginning of Ramadan. Jasmine Khan is my guest. She's an authoress from the Western Cape. We're talking about the books she has published. Your first book, Experience the Flow. What inspired you to write the book? And in a nutshell, tell us what's it about.
All right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In a nutshell, Experience the Flow is inner transformation with Allah consciousness. You know, Julie, we're born and we live. And when we are born, we're pure and innocent. And as we go through life, things happen to us. And sometimes they are traumatic things and we can't deal with it. Obviously, as a child, we can't. But as we grow older, it becomes a habit that we just park it and park it and park it. So we get to the stage where we're now going to get married, or even, in my case, I was 60 years of age already when it happened, that you find that you're carrying all this baggage. So it's a case of acknowledging that it's happened to you, accepting that it has happened to you. That's very important.
Because if you don't, you'll have the situation that you had on holiday when someone asked you why you're so angry.
Exactly.
You're going to carry all this toxic anger around with you.
Exactly. So once you've acknowledged and accepted it, this is the time when you move forward. And I always say to people, what has happened to you and what was said to you does not define who you are. Your fitra, the one that you are born with, when the malaika blows the ruh into you, when you're a fetus in your mother's womb, that stays pure. Nobody can change that. Only Allah can change that. So what has happened to you does not define who you are. But we live in a world where outside pressures define who we are and what we're supposed to do. So that basically is Experience the Flow.
So do you in fact tell the viewer, the readers, despite what has happened to you, you can pick yourself up, live in the moment and make the moment as great as you possibly can?
Absolutely. That's the message.
Alhamdulillah.
All it needs is for you to have the courage. It's a painful process. Make no mistake, it's not easy. It's very painful. But I always say it's doable.
Change is a painful process.
It's always doable.
Let's go on to your second book, because I understand the third and the fourth is the same book that you've just republished.
Yeah.
What's the second book all about?
The second book...
Where do you draw inspiration from these books? Was it your own experiences, your own life experiences that you kind of draw from and then realize that this has happened to me, it's happening to a million other people or millions of other people? A strong message needs to go out.
Definitely. Experience the Flow was definitely my journey. But like I said to people, it doesn't have all the sensational details because it's not an Oprah book. So it is my journey, how I became, as I said, a door opened and I was forced to go through. There was no way that I could go back into my little corner and go and sit and read myself into a coma, you know. So one has to go forward. Behind closed doors is a compilation of the column Stop the Cycle. Like I explained to you, it is the things that we do, for instance, the way we treat our children. The first article is The Silent Scream, which is about the women abuse, about how people they lack manners these days. The fact that parents no longer take their children out into the outdoors, it's to the mall and back. And basically, it's things that are happening in the community. And I give the one article I really liked was about the janazas, where people chatter all the time while the mayyat is there. So it's a social commentary on what is
The book is a social commentary.
Yeah,
what would people derive from reading that book? So let's assume there's a woman that's in a terribly abusive marriage. What is she going to gain from reading that book? Are there any experiences or tools that she can glean from reading the book and perhaps apply it in her own life?
Well, yes, the tools that are in there are basically what Allah wants us to do, and to acknowledge who we are, that we are a divine creation of Allah, and that we don't deserve this. None of us deserves to be treated badly, because Allah doesn't treat us badly. It doesn't matter what we do and how much we go along the wrong path. Allah is very merciful and all forgiving. So people can see what the Deen says about these things, about what Allah says about women, what Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about women. I always say that when the man obeys Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam on how to treat his wife, then I for one would kiss his feet. But they always talk about the woman, what the woman must do. I remember many years ago I attended a Jummah lecture, and the Imam said that when I talk about what the women must do, then the men run home to say what the Imam has said. But when he talks about what the men must do, then they saunter along the way, and they've already by the time they enter home, they've forgotten what the Imam said. So it's very much a case of, you know, what is sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander.
In terms of women abuse, and we know it's rife all around the world, reading the books, how is that going to... So I as a woman will read the book and it will resonate with me because you are telling my story. How do I make my partner stop the abuse? Because he's not going to read the book. How do I change his thinking?
That is a question. The thing is that, you know, Julie, the thing is that we're not educated. We don't have the knowledge. Currently in Cape Town, there's a program running called The Gaps in Marriage.
Which, inshallah, I'm going to talk about on Saturday.
So that question can be answered there, because we don't know, we've never been taught how. When we as mothers raise our sons, we pamper them and we spoil them because this is our darling little boy.
And we think that's the way we're expressing our love.
Yes, but we need to know that we're raising our children for other people, not just our sons, but also our daughters, you know. So it's a case of the men are the abusers, but who raised them? Who raised them? Who instilled the values in them? It's a woman.
So the poor mothers carry the guilt. So we need to, as mothers, put right what is wrong. But it's the how, that's what I'm trying to get at. But I assume by reading the books, even if you don't find the answer in the book, it's going to give you food for thought. It's going to make you think that these are the issues playing out in our homes and our communities. And it's about time collectively that we start doing something about it.
I can just briefly tell you of an incident that actually happened. A young girl was... from Johannesburg, got married to a man in Cape Town, and she was living there in a block of flats. And her husband used to lock her into the flat every morning until he comes home. And then a neighbor of hers befriended her through the window. And she told her now about the story. And then this person happened to have a copy of Experience the Flow. And she handed it to her through the bars. And she said, read this book. And then a few days later, when she went past it, she saw the girl was not there. And she was wondering what had happened. And a few weeks later, she had a telephone call from Johannesburg to say, I read the book you gave me. Thank you very much. I called my father and he came to fetch me.
Wow. Okay. So it's about awareness. It's about awakening. It's about taking back your power. On to your
The Mooney
fourth
Sighted.
book, The Mooney Sighted. So very appropriately timed. Alhamdulillah. I think we can't wait for the Mubarak month of Ramadan.
Absolutely. And during the month of Rajab and the month of Shaban, we're already going into that spirit.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with rizq, barakah and everything that's good for us as Muslims.
Amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. So the Mooney Sighted, I worked on the premise that every year when Ramadan is over, we're on the spiritual high. And we swear that we're not going to lose it. But, you know, life happens. And before we can blink our eyes, we say, oh my word, is it Rajab already? So this book is based on the principles of the Quran and Sunnah.
Alhamdulillah.
And it teaches us or it guides us to get into the stage, I always call it into the flow of Allah's taqdeer. And what I really would like the people who read this book to take notice of, the 30-day principles of Ramadan. Every day there is a principle. And as the person who wrote the foreword of this book, by the way, Najmanisa said, type it out on a card and put it on your fridge and try to live that principle for the day.
Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show, but where can people get the book?
They can get it from me. I'm currently in Johannesburg. I'm launching the book in Johannesburg in Lens on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. And I'm hoping to get it into the CSI.
Where in Lenasia?
It's at the Impala Primary School.
Okay, wonderful. So everyone can come and meet and greet you, buy the book and experience the flow and the Mooney Sighted, inshallah, and behind closed doors.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah for being with us on the show. It's really been great meeting you, and all the very best on the sales of the book, and hope to meet you again sometime soon.
Inshallah, Julie, it was lovely, and Jazakallah for having me on the show.
My pleasure.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. What an amazing woman. Granny of 5 children, and she is still experiencing the flow, and she is going with the flow, alhamdulillah, writing books and living life to the fullest in the moment. Don't go away. Another inspiration lady is waiting in the wings to join us as well to share her story with us. Welcome back, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next guest. Her name is Najmanisa Solomon, and coincidentally, she happens to be the mother of Hawa Solomons, who presents the Health Talk right here on ITV. So I'm truly delighted to have Najmanisa on my show today. She's raised a beautiful daughter. She has 4 other daughters as well. She's here to talk to us about gaps in marriage, and she works in close collaboration with my previous guest, and that is Jasmine Khan. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran for having me, and salam to all the listeners and whoever's watching the TV.
Lovely to have you here, and I truly feel privileged that you have this amazing collaboration with Jasmine. But now you come from a mental health background. You've been as a voluntary counsellor with SADC for over 18 years, and you've done lots more. Just give us a brief background as to all of the work you've done thus far.
Okay, what motivated me, I was a mother of a young baby about 43 years ago, and I suffered from afterbirth depression. I was then put in touch with Liz Mills in Neisner. I've never met her in my life, but she used to do hotline counseling for me, and through that I became very involved in SADC at the time, and then I started working for them voluntarily and got involved with mental health, understanding mental health, and I needed to know much more. As a young Muslim woman, there wasn't much information and much opportunity or places that we could go to. So afterbirth depression was like a unknown thing in our culture.
Back in the day.
Yes, absolutely. And when I started learning these things, I couldn't bring it back to the other side of the railway line. And it was also still the time of apartheid. And I was a Cape Coloured, so I had to kind of work within the framework where I could attend things and learn things and be exposed to various kind of informational workshops and stuff. So alhamdulillah, that was the start of it. But that opened a whole new world for me, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. With that, I attended many other kind of workshops and studies. I happened to work in the area of Mitchell's Plain for 14 years as well as a volunteer. With the results, I won.
A volunteer counsellor?
No. In Mitchell's Plain, I worked the network opposing women abuse. I used to do counselling for them at the police station or at the court, help the women
Victim
set up,
support.
Yeah, victim support kind of thing. And through that, I managed to get a scholarship that I could go and study things in any way that I would like to.
Wow.
So I've managed with the qudrat of Allah, alhamdulillah, to do certain modules of certain topics that I was interested in. In all three of the universities we could attend for 6 months, sometimes it's just 4 weeks, sometimes it's longer. And with that, the parent center was ultimately my goal to end up in. I always wanted to be a better or good enough parent and understand my role as a parent. Having daughters, it's a lot more challenging than what it is to have sons, as what I've seen and learned now. And you have to understand yourself to be able to understand your daughters. And if we're truthful and honest with what we are experiencing and going through, we can empathize with our daughters in a much better way. And what really sat with me is when I learned about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when they said there's no manual for parenting, but I thought that was such a powerful hadith that actually covers the whole manual. And it was about play with your children the first 7 years. And play is such an important thing that I've learned and discovered now. Then teach them the second 7 years, and then befriend them at the next 7 years. Whereas scientifically, the science has taken it a bit further, up to 28 years old, when the umbilical cord disconnects from the child. So I had the opportunity with the qudrat of Allah, but at the parent center I could go for various different courses, lots of training, lots of developing happens there. It was really a full circle moment for me to be there, and I thank that place from the bottom of my heart up till today. My tutor there and my life coach today, up till today, my mentor is Fauzia Raycliffe. And the aura and the atmosphere and the environment there is just absolutely amazing to make you feel you are accepted for who you are. And if you have a child with a problem or a sickness or anything, you as a parent must take off to first see to your child. They won't let you work a day if you have something going on at home, because you cannot concentrate on your work if you have something going on. So the ethos of the philosophy of the parent center is what attracted me, because it was the Prophet ﷺ. It was what he ordered for us to live by as human beings.
Absolutely.
So that immediately captured me, and I was totally in awe working there. So alhamdulillah, I worked for them for about plus minus 12 years, and I was the coordinator for the Mitchells Plain region after being in Mitchells Plain for many years as a volunteer. So I knew the Mitchells Plain area very well, and it was the kind of work that we did was just phenomenal. Up till now, they're still doing it.
Alhamdulillah. You've then moved along and you met with Jasmine Khan, our previous guest on the show. How did that collaboration happen?
I with being at the parent center, I'm not a visual person, I'm an audio person. So when I read individually, and I can capture a lot of things when I listen. That's my strengths, and I came to learn those things. I also found out that I'm a bit dyslexic when I had a challenge with a dyslexic child, and I had to go and find out more information of how to manage it. So with each one of my children, I needed to grow and develop for the challenges that Allah brought with So as a parent, I would recommend for any mother, if there comes a challenge, it is Allah saying, learn more about something. So with Hajra being a bit dyslexic and being at college in a training area, I discovered, you know what, I must have been some form in those years, but there was no detection of that. There was no inclination. Nobody kind of, those are just, you're just maybe a stupid child or you're a child that cannot read.
True.
And I know I was a brilliant student. I know I was sharp. I know I'm very creative and artistic, but I'm an audio person. So I'm an audio and cognitive, but visual can be done individually on my own. I can focus on that. So I'm the person that would read privately and being able to lay out the thing for you afterwards. So that kind of cemented Jasmine and myself so beautifully together. What I think she could put into writing. So most of the time, all our manuals has been designed by both of us, but I will either talk her through it or I'll record it and she will type it out and we'll come back and forth until it gets to the printers. So what I've done with my knowledge that I've gained over the years, I could collaborate all the studies that I've done and all the work that I've done into a user-friendly manual for our Muslim people, because I'm a transformational therapist with an Islamic ethos. So I try to keep, you get information to become transformation. So it's always information that I'm feeding into society, and whoever takes the information or the manual or whatever and they can run with it, they must just not misinterpret it. Then I'll get on board with that.
So you talk about being a transformational therapist. Unpack that for us.
Okay.
And of course, you say with an Islamic ethos, we know that we are not unique. We Muslims, we are, I believe, being blessed with the Holy Quran.
Absolutely.
And obviously, our Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam brought Allah's message to us as people to enlighten us. However, we should be the ideal population, so to speak, but we're human, our nafs overtakes, etc. So we have huge issues in our communities.
Absolutely.
As a transformational therapist, how do you then get those very strong messages across? And we know what the problems are. We know there's issues around abuse, there's issues around alcoholism, there's issues around drug addiction, there's issues around breaking down of family structures, isolating yourself from relatives, etc., etc., etc.
Look, for me, my work is about the inner self. So I work with what you give me, and I will be able to analyze the situation by your expression, body movement, eye contact. The eyes tells is the channels to your soul and your five senses. So your five senses is something that we've forgotten about. If we can just regulate our five senses in the morning and in the evening, we'll have a balanced life within 30 days. So taking a deep breath, and in the morning when you wake up and you breathe deeply in, and you thank Allah, first of all, for being able to breathe, to taste. What are you tasting in your mouth? I need a toothbrush. What are you laying on is a bed. I can touch my bed and my beautiful comforter. So there's a lot of gratitude that comes with that. When I open my eyes, I look around me. I have curtains on my window. I have a window. I have a room that's painted. I have a dressing table. I have a
comfortable home.
I have things around me that I've forgotten about to say thank you for. So we base the entire therapy without them knowing on your five senses, and we will work with what you give me. So if they come for the first time, they first give me a background of where they come from. The inner child is very important. We take you down to that level. There's a specialized workshop that we run. It's called self-awareness. It's based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Those who know themselves will know their Lord. So the gaps in marriage, the gaps in parenting, the gaps in programs that I do is all based on those kind of things. So it's knowing yourself, and then you'll be able to know others and your Lord.
We're going to talk about gaps in marriage, and this seems to be targeted mainly at men. Let's go for an ad break. When we come back, let's hear how do the men respond to a Muslim sister when she talks to them about these issues, inshallah. Najma Nisa Solomon is my guest, and we're talking about gaps in marriage. Don't go away. I think the next 12 minutes are going to be very interesting indeed. Welcome back. Najmanisa Solomon, all the way from the Western Cape, is here to talk to us about Gaps in Marriage, a program that she runs in the Western Cape. And of course, you've heard the collaboration she has with our previous guest, Jasmine Khan, the author. Now, let's talk about these classes, Gaps in Marriage. Alhamdulillah, I think our community has woken up to the fact that we have huge social issues in our community, and very especially we need to get young people prepared for marriage, not for the wedding day, not for all the, for all the glitz and the glamour. That's just by the way. I think it's a waste of time and good money, but be that as it may, for the actual partnership, how do you prepare them?
Shukran. The first session we have, it's a 10-week program. We run it between Maghrib and Isha at Masjid al-Sabr in Parkwood. So after Maghrib, people come over into the class. This is the second edition. We ran one last year, ended in November, and we had a space. We started one in February this year. Tomorrow will be the 8th session, which Zubaida will do on behalf of me, and next week hopefully I'm back, inshallah. So the first session is about interaction and them saying what do they think is the gaps in marriage. So we will note that down on a book.
Whether you're married or not.
Whether you're married or not. We cover all those areas. So the first session is more about finding out what they think is the gaps in marriage. So that will be communication, it will be disrespectfulness, cheating, lying, all the kind of things that's happening in life. They will call it out and we will write those things down. That's the first session. As an introductory session, we then try to find out by you if you know any of your strengths. What is your strengths? Some say this, some say that. So
and weaknesses, I should imagine. That's very important.
We get there, the strength, and we actually have a SWOT that we do mid-time of the workshop that they can go and do and find out. So the first session is all about getting to know yourself. Leading into the second session is about your temperament, capacity, personality, and abilities, physical abilities, because some people are poorly built and do not have the same kind of strength as the other person. So it's important to understand and know the person's capacity from a physical, emotional, psychological kind of way. So you have a spouse or you have a friend that you like and you're interested in, and you know all these things about this person before you get married to this person. But when you get married, you are getting to know a husband, of course, and a husband gets to know a wife. So the covering of the workshop is not specifically going out on men. It's a very fair and even one. And as a woman, my experience is the importance of females that have to apply a certain particular role of how they're going to raise their sons so that we can stop the cycle. We keep on hearing year over year about the violence and the domestic violence and the 16 days of activists, and it's always sort of steered in the sense to women. But the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And the world is in chaos, so we need to look at how are we rocking the cradle. It is a natural anatomy thing that a mother is more closer to a son. It's not something that she chooses to be in. It's only because when she carries the boy child, he takes nothing from her to coexist his endocrine system. The female takes everything from a mother to coexist because she needs a female endocrine system, which the male doesn't. He only takes what he needs from his mother.
Wow.
So the anatomy of you automatically feels internally, genetically, that you want to do. And also it's a male, it's the opposite sex. We are made to be attracted and to give and to be as a female. Females are not the emotional people, they are the compassionate people in life. They are about aitoch, voitoch and sistoch. Men are actually emotionally intelligent people because they deal with one emotion at a time. They don't have the capacity to switch from one to the other. And we have to understand the anatomy, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have created a male and the way He have created a female. And once we go into getting to know ourselves and knowing I'm a female, I am about this, that, and the other. I can go like this in my brain. Men cannot. Give them one thing at a time, pause, and if their temperaments is not in sync with that, you even have a tougher job.
How is this going to help a troubled marriage? So you have the couple sitting there and all of their issues are unpacked. How do you go forward in resolving those issues? Because if you don't, that marriage is going to break up.
Okay. So we don't resolve it in the workshop. We give you all the information to you so that you could add the transformation to your life. But for the 10 weeks, they only digest. In between the 10 weeks, they can make an appointment with me, either one-on-one, couples or individuals, and we can take them through the journey, and then they become a one-on-one sessions where you can now help them apply those things that they have learned. Very often the questions comes out and say, when we go back home, we're both quiet, we both just thinking of what we've learned and what was said tonight, and I'm taking a reflection. I have people coming in and saying, subhanallah, tonight it was so, like for me, the class, I could really take stock of me. I can really have a look at me. And we try to teach in the stations of nafs. How do you do in the first station, the second station, and the third station, which are 0 to 7, 7 to 14, and 14 to 21. How do you befriend somebody? Befriending your child is by thinking about, what was I like at that age? You're not your child's friend, but you can befriend your child by thinking, what did I feel like when I was 14? What is the kind of challenges that I felt in myself? And that is exactly what your child will be having. So we're looking at young couples wanting to get married because there's this order of Allah to say that no courting, it's haram, and you cannot be in each other's company. But we know these things are happening under our noses. How do we plan and prepare for them? Think about yourself at that age. Think about what's the kind of things that went through your head. Think about the anatomy change that you had. Speak to your child about it so that your child know, my parents understand my complete development as a being. And that is our biggest slip. Our lower self of nafs, that we constantly go into a poor me syndrome. We all go in a victim mode majority of the time. It's me, the world owes me everything went wrong for me as a child, and it's still going wrong. So it's the healing that you have to do prior to marriage. The counseling or intervention that you can do prior to marriage. We can take 3 sessions for a couple, take them through a marriage before, 2 sessions before and 1 after. And the session of the 2 is just getting to understand what is a relationship about. How well is your relationship with yourself, and how well is your relationship with the higher?
That's a very important aspect, because we don't know ourselves well enough to still be engaging with someone else. And we're very selfish in a relationship. It's all about me, my needs, and how much of control I can wield in this relationship.
That's just the first module, Auntie Julie. There's 10 modules, and we go as far as
and
that.
Unfortunately, it's
Yes.
time to wrap up.
Inshallah.
Can I please invite you to join me on my Saturday program, where we can pick up from where we've left off. So let's just quickly summarize what we've covered now, and then on the Saturday show, we'll pick up further.
Well, there's still 9 modules to continue to specify exactly what it is about and what is it for. Inshallah.
All right, so that's where we leave it. Shukran so very much for being with us. Enjoy your stay in Johannesburg, and
excited for the book
long
launch.
live this partnership between you and Jasmine Khan. Assalamu alaikum to you. The lovely mother of Khawa Solomons, who presents the Health Talk show right here on ITV, talking to us about gaps in a marriage. We'll get her back on the show for Saturday as well to continue where we've left off. Thank you for being with me. As always, take care on the roads. And till the next time, it is Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Alli.